What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Friday, April 3rd, 2020. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. Thank goodness it's Friday. We have got a lot to talk about today. The phone lines are open. 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, ready to answer the phone when you call on in, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and observations. And as we've been doing this whole week, we're going to start with the non-coronavirus news and just get that up there first because we're all tired of this. We're corona'd out. All righty, so let's start with Joe Biden. Apparently he was in an interview, a press briefing yesterday, where he literally forgot the question he was asked. And it is just amazing that the Democrats are putting this guy forward as their candidate, unless they want Trump to have a second term. Of course, with everything going the way it is with the country right now, that may be exactly what they want. You know, Trump gets to inherit the mess that's going to happen over the next few years. And they tarnish the Republicans with it, and they come back and try again for a Democratic Congress and a Democratic president. Anyway, Biden is dealing with his own, hang on, I got to take this off. For those of you listening on the radio, I was wearing a mask with a smile drawn on it. Excuse me. All right, so let's get back to this thing. Biden is dealing with his own accusation of sexual impropriety, and it underscores the hypocrisy of Hollywood because, you know, they basically turned a blind eye to Harvey Weinstein until it got exposed in the press. And then, of course, they said, oh, you know, Me Too, and it's terrible and horrible things. And now that Biden is dealing with it, again, Hollywood has gone silent, absolutely silent on this thing. Biden made a point of talking about his 5 grandchildren. He actually has 7 of them. Now, there's been a little bit of an incident, and in this case, I have to side with the captain on this. On the USS Theodore Roosevelt, as you're probably already aware, the captain wrote a letter basically saying something had to be done to protect the crew of the ship because they were testing positive for COVID-19. And he CC'd about 20 people on the letter. And somebody, nobody knows who, but somebody leaked it to the San Francisco Chronicle, and it went public from there. And of course, it was big news. And the Navy commander of the aircraft carrier, Captain Brett Crozier, was fired, was relieved of his command. And as he was leaving the ship, the entire ship's crew got together, chanting his name, Captain Crozier, and applauding and everything. Now, the Secretary of the Navy is basically out there saying that he violated chain of command, which is not exactly accurate because the letter was addressed to his next superior up the line. Pardon me. And then they said, well, the problem is the letter going public made the families of the crew panic and wonder what was going on. Well, we don't know that Captain Crozier leaked it. And so I think that he shouldn't have been fired. A reprimand, maybe, but you don't get rid of an experienced carrier commander that easily. And hopefully they'll reinstate him or something. Anyway, let's take a phone call. John in Tennessee. Aloha, John. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I called in yesterday. I was the second to last caller, and I was telling you that I was thinking there was a financial reset going on, right?
Yes.
And Stadmiller on his show was playing the video from Dana Ashley with the citizen journalism, all the people going to the hospitals and videotaping, and I looked her up just to check one of her videos, and I ended up with her video from early March about the 5G, and I took in about a third of that video, and I think it makes a lot of sense. They could just be rolling out the 5G as well. And, you know, if any of that science is accurate, that we're getting blasted with 60 hertz, and it impacts the oxygen going to the hemoglobin, going to the rest of the, organs in the body. If they rolled that out in Wuhan and all that stuff, I mean, telling everybody to stay home, well, then we can't see them installing all the 5G stuff. The next stimulus package, they're already talking about massive infrastructure. That would include 5G installation. Her video was very good. Sam Blumenthal was up there asking all the technology guys, how much money have you put into research if the 5G is harmful to humans? No money whatsoever. So I think there's some legitimacy to that. So I think it's kind of a two-pronged attack. And now, the way they talk about flatten the curve and it's going to be a real bad 2 weeks or 3 weeks, every state, they're giving you these graphs about when it's about to peak. I mean, if the science is there and they turn on the 5G switch, people are going to have respiratory problems. There's no phlegm in their lungs. So what is it? It could be, radiation sickness. And this thing could definitely peak as they roll out 5G.
Let me cut in here. First of all, 60 hertz is house current. Okay, and you're.
I'm sorry, 60 gigahertz. Yeah.
Okay. Second of all, while I am concerned about the sum total of all electromagnetic radiation that is impacting us every day from AM and FM radio stations, TV stations, two-way radios, and all the rest of that, singling out 5G, I think, pardon me, is very inappropriate. And I think the problem is that the United States was very slow on a 5G rollout because they didn't want to spend the money. And that's why we're seeing all this negative stuff about 5G so that we stay with our 4G and 3G phones. I obviously disagree. I don't think that 5G is any more or less dangerous than any other radio source that's out there. And again, I think it's fake news. Trying to claim.
Like I said, I mean, I'm not going to come down on one side or the other. It's like I said, I saw her video. I know people have talked about it. I mean, if she's going on for it, she doesn't sound like a hit and run. Let me drop a conspiracy theory, slap you in the face with it, and take off. So I agree with you. Going, yeah, maybe it's not there, but if we are going, if a wireless router is 2.4 gigahertz and then you're going to 60, I don't know, So, I mean, like I said, I want all things entertained because, I told you yesterday, I'm going in the Nashville hospitals. I'm taking photographs of all these tents outside these hospitals, and there's one power cord going in there, and it's not filled with people. But all of a sudden, in 2 weeks, you fill those things with crisis actors, and that's the way we're all thinking. All of us people that have had the wool pulled over our eyes over the mass shootings and all the other stuff, you fill those things with crisis actors in 2 weeks. I'm not going to say it's 5G right out of the gate either, but they're going to scare the living hell out of everybody. And again, I do go with the financial reset thing because, I mean, really, you stop the United States economy for 2 full months. Now, what is that effect? You know what I mean? It's not about, hurting the poor. I don't think they're trying to hurt anybody. It's like you had said before. They're just going to get the numbers are finally going to line up. The numbers that we thought they were, like when Obama left office, unemployment was double digits, not 5%. Yeah, well, now the numbers will all line up once this thing is over with. But, again, none of us like it. And I would have never heard of Dana Ashley if, Stedmiller didn't bring her up. But I ended up finding that video. And it does end up getting knocked down. But let me throw this in there, too, by the way. Because I just turned on Alex Jones for 10 minutes today. But my gosh, if he wasn't just going on and on about the body count's going to go through the roof, I mean, he really just sounds like a guy who got his marching orders going, tell everybody the body count's going to go way up and all this stuff. And I'm like, gosh, because he really did turn to some other side of whatever. So like I said, we don't know what's going to happen in the next 2-3 weeks, but I'm going to take the White House's word for it that things are going to get really, really bad. It's going to get bad, and I want us all to entertain all topics, and that's what your show's good for. We can entertain all topics, and then we don't lose our sanity when you know what I mean? Yes,
I know exactly what you mean.
Okay.
All right, so thanks a lot for the phone call. Sure. We're going to let you go here, And again, I'm concerned about the sum total of all electromagnetic radiation that we are exposed to, whether it's EMF coming from our computers and our appliances, AM/FM over-the-air broadcasting, TV over-the-air broadcasting. There's a lot of radio noise out there. There's radio noise coming down from outer space, as a matter of fact. So it's not like unless you want to live your life in a Faraday cage, it's just a fact of life. Is it having an effect? Maybe. Nobody really wants to look. I do know that in a lot of places around the world, there are now basically rules where powerful transmitters have to be sited away from residential districts. And I think that's a very good thing, because you don't want to be basically living in what amounts to a giant microwave oven. Anyway, getting on to the economic news here. $5 crude oil could put Canada's oil sands out of business. So Canada is feeling the pinch of the plummeting oil prices, along with the American shale industry as well. And hundreds of rural petrol stations, gas stations, are facing closures as fuel demand dries up during the coronavirus lockdown. And yeah, there's a surplus of gasoline at a time when demand is way, way down. And what was really interesting is you're starting to see pictures of areas that normally have tremendous amounts of pollution, and the skies are clear and the birds are singing, and they've actually got animals that are, coming back in from nature because the streets are all deserted. All right, we're going to take some more phone calls. Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Happy Friday. But I'm very happy the Navy took the command from that admiral or captain. I'm sorry. Yes. I mean, the Theodore Roosevelt is a ship of war. Okay, and
yes.
He leaked, and he didn't follow the chain of command, and he wrote a letter about the situation on his vessel. And he spread it around outside his chain of command, and it leaked out. Now, whether he leaked it on purpose or somebody he sent it to leaked, it was a huge violation of security. I mean, it's a wonder. This captain forgets that his ship is a ship of war. Okay, and you got coronavirus patients and whatever. You follow the chain of command. This is a war basically against the virus. But I mean, how many of America's enemies, like potentially Iran or China? I mean, now they know that a few coronavirus patients on a Navy ship can decapacitate the vessel and have to go to Guam. And I mean, this is crazy. This guy, I mean, I don't know what touchy-feely education he had as far as being a master of a vessel, but he forgot that he's the master of a ship of war is the problem. I mean, he's probably got a bunch of women on there, and they probably put him through training on anger management. Yes,
Joe, I think the claim that we're at war against the virus is more of a metaphor. I really don't think an aircraft carrier is going to be all that effective against a virus anyway. They send up the jets here and try and shoot the little things. I don't think it's going to really work.
But what I'm saying is that we are...
And a captain is responsible not just for the ship and for the mission, but for the men and women under his command. And to be very honest, now I'm not in the Navy. I don't pretend to be. But in my opinion, while he probably should have not distributed the letter to quite so many people and should have followed the chain of command, I think he did the right thing. He said, we've got a problem on the ship because whether it gets out or not, if enough people get sick on that ship, the ship is incapacitated. I mean, it was no secret on board the ship itself that people were getting sick and people were coming down with this coronavirus. And I think he did the right thing. Had we actually been in a shooting war and he was out there on the front lines, that would be different. But it's just an aircraft carrier out on patrol, to basically look good, to do a sales pitch here. I think he did a good thing. I think the Navy overreacted, maybe a reprimand, a letter in his folder. But to relieve him of his command over this, I think they overreacted.
Well, personally, I think he should be court-martialed for it because he took America's ship of war, an aircraft carrier, and basically now it's useless. It's at Guam for what could be just a mild flu or a serious flu. I mean, these aren't a bunch of 80-year-old people with diabetes that are dying. These are healthy naval young men and women. Then once again, I think that this is the touchy-feely Navy, the anger management, women's rights. and then they fall in love with their crew instead of being masters and captains of a vessel of war. And when I said we're at war with the virus, we are. But of course, not the boat is not at war with the virus. But as a nation, we have to suck it up and be strong and hard. And you'd expect a branch of the military to do that. And when you do have a weakness, not to let that weakness get out into the media. That's why he should be court-martialed, because he is a weak man, but because he's weak as far as letting his crew run right over him. But his real major flaw
wait a minute. We don't know who leaked the letter to the press. Okay.
Yeah, but he gave it outside his chains of command, so he's responsible for it being leaked, because if he would have went through the chain of command, it wouldn't have been leaked. The leak came from somebody he sent it to, but the fact of the matter is he sent it to somebody that leaked it. And that's where he violated the chain of command. And therefore, he should be court-martialed for that. He really should. Oh. This is a ship of war. This isn't like kids out on a cruise boat for having a good time. We'd never win World War II against the Japanese with guys like this.
Joe, let me ask you a question. Let's say that the captain followed the chain of command and he sent the letter up the chain of command. What do you think the Navy's going to do with an aircraft carrier with basically an epidemic on board? They would have done exactly the same thing. They would have put the ship into port, they would have gotten the crew off, and they would have started sterilizing the ship, which is exactly what's happening right now. Because if you keep that boat out at sea under this idea that it's a ship of war and the entire crew comes down sick, then that asset is basically unavailable anyway, regardless of where it is.
But he violated operational security by allowing our enemies to know that our vessel was disabled because of the coronavirus, because he lacked going through the chain of command. You're right. It probably would have went to Guam anyway, and maybe their spies in Guam would have picked it up. But this issue has been public and publicized to our enemies because the captain violated the chain of command, and somebody leaked the information about a coronavirus, basically disabling one of our ships of war. And that's, once again, that's a captain should know better than that. He's educated. He's surely reminded of that chain of command. And that's why he should be court-martialed, in my view. I'm just, I'm sorry. I don't. Yep. Well,
I disagree. Like I said, I'm not Navy, but had I been in his position, maybe I would have used a more secure email system, and maybe I would have confined the letter to the immediate chain of command. But I would have done exactly the same thing and said, we've got to do something. We've got to keep our crew healthy, because he's responsible for the crew, including their health, not just the ship, not just the hardware, not just the aircraft.
That's obvious, but he didn't. His violation of the chain of command is the issue. That's why he was relieved of command, was because he violated the chain of command, and the Navy did the right thing. And once again, he should be court-martialed for his security lapse. I mean, they told you lose your security clearance in the Navy. I work for MSC, and they still never told me even why I lost my security clearance. I think it was because something somebody else did on another boat. But you have a captain that violates security rules and violates the chain of command about an aircraft carrier or a ship of war, and he doesn't lose his security clearance? I mean, why should he be held to such a light standard? He should be held to a high standard, and therefore he should lose his. I think he should be court-martialed. Now, maybe not a dishonorable discharge, but discharge him. I think that you make an example out of this man. This is a violation of he'd lose his security clearance if he worked in the Merchant Marine, I'll tell you that right now. And how could you have a captain of an aircraft carrier without a security clearance, So I'm sorry,
I would agree on that one, that possibly because he sent that letter to so many people, his security clearance would have to be reevaluated. But again, I think a reprimand would have been sufficient and adequate. It would certainly have kept him from flag promotion. Anyway, listen, we got to let you go. Got to take a break from commercials, and we'll be back with more phone calls after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And a reminder that Republic Broadcasting Network is in the middle of a fundraising drive, and we need your help. If we're going to stay on the air, we need your help. And the postal address where you can send a check Money order, or if you prefer anonymity, cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. And of course, donations to whatreallyhappened.com can be made at the website. All right, so let's go back to the phones here to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Joe, from Tennessee. The chain of command, are you serious? Dude, let me tell you, Edward Snowden tried to follow the chain of command. How did it work out for him?
Yeah.
Like, come on now. Let's follow the chain of command. Let's talk about the Fat Leonard scandal. You know? No, Mike,
you're right about that.
the Navy is probably the most corrupt of all the armed forces. All the armed forces have a bureaucracy. That's the chain of command is a bureaucracy. Okay? It's basically, these people are all connected to the military-industrial complex. And, Joe, you talked about that before. So, but the chain of command, this wouldn't have happened. The Navy probably tried to cover this up, Mike. Remember, like, with the mishaps with the ships running in the oil tank, cargo ships and stuff? You know, and then they tried to blame it on, like, GPS. Yeah, our GPS got jammed.
No, do you remember at first
You know,
they claimed it was a deliberate attack? They claimed these very expensive cargo and tanker ships deliberately tried to ram our military vessels, which didn't, of course, make the military vessels look all that good because they're supposed to be fast and maneuverable and be able to get out of the way.
Again, people are not. We are an empire run by an oligarchy, and that includes your chain of command in the armed forces. I hate to break it to you. That's why when these generals leave, they go to work for Bechtel, you know, or Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and other companies like that. It's a revolving door. So chain of command. That's what I think about the chain of command in this country. What about the chain of command in our government? Like, just what about our government in general? You know, the fish rots from the head down, and it's all rotted, top to bottom. That includes the military. It's rotted. It's rotted, man. Remember, like, when Trump was running, he needs to fire the first 300 or 500 generals, you know? That's the rot, man. You know? That's your chain of command, basically, right? the whole system, you know? But Mike, I got to switch gears on the first caller. The 5G thing is bunk. Because 60 gigahertz, Mike, I don't know if you knew this. This came out years ago. There was an HDMI wireless adapter. You can connect to your TV. It does 60 gigahertz. It doesn't go through walls. If you walk in front of it, it blanks out. It's got to have a line of sight. And 5G is safer than the other ones because that's why they have to put all those towers closer together because they lose the signal.
It's lower power.
You know, yeah, exactly. But, Mike, Iran doesn't have 5G. Russia don't have 5G yet. But there's cases over there. So that whole thing is bunk. That's put out as bunk.
Well,
you know,
all I can say is if people are worried about 5G, then maybe they could make some tinfoil hats to go along with their face masks.
Well, you know, in the UK, did you see that story where they set some of the towers on fire because of these celebrities saying it was 5G? There was a story on that today or yesterday about some of the towers were set ablaze because of this bunk about 5G. It's going to fry us. Didn't they do the same thing about the microwave? Yeah. If you want to put yourself in the microwave. But come on, man. Like, yeah, 5G is a crap story. And I keep hearing this from some of your callers. They go into the hospital and they're empty. Well, maybe the lobby is empty, but how do you know those rooms are not filled? Like the ICU, like do you go into the ICU? You know, I mean,
you're not going to be allowed in there.
Exactly,
I mean,
but
if you just walk in off the street and if you don't know an actual patient there, they'll let you see the patient in their room, but you're not allowed to go into the other rooms. You know, and it's for your protection as much as anything else. And so, yeah.
And Mike, again, if it's about the economic system, like basically in the West collapsing, then why would Russia and Iran and China go along with it? because they're not really, they have their own systems coming up. You know,
Yes.
why would they have, you know what I mean? So that whole, I'm sorry, folks, but this thing is probably real. Just because we have an economic system problem doesn't mean this virus is fake. It could be at the same time. Yeah, it's a coincidence, but, you know, all these cases. And, Mike, by the way, I don't know if you heard this, but there was an inside leaked memo from the UK saying be prepared for 1,000 deaths a day till at least past Easter. You know, so they're going to see a lot of death in the UK, and we're going to see a lot of death. And Mike, I also read another story about Lombardy, Italy, how there was reports
Yeah, I'm going to have to put you on hold there, Dustin.
Okay.
We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Dustin in New Jersey. And Dustin, you had one more thing you wanted to share with us?
Yeah, about Lombardy, Italy, where they have like that, just Italy and Lombardy. Mike, there's like articles going back to November talking about like this pneumonia that was going around. I don't know if you saw anything on that, but could it have been like lingering? Maybe it started in Lombardy, Italy and went to Wuhan, or maybe that went to Lombardy, Italy earlier, but there's articles on it happening in Lombardy, Italy, like in maybe October or something. But there was talk about some strange pneumonia going on, so it makes you think, right? Like,
yeah, could be.
You know?
I mean, they were a little late in identifying that this was a whole new disease.
And look at the death rate they got in Italy.
Yes.
It's pretty damn high, man. I mean, it's pretty bad over there.
Yes, it is.
Really dropped only slightly, Mike. I mean, it's I think 700 something died in the last 24 hours. This is nuts, you know. But Mike, one more thing before I get off the phone. This is to Joe from Tennessee. We're at war with a virus, but we lost the war because you ain't got no mask, PPEs, and gloves. That's it. Game over. Go home. Right?
Yep.
That's it. Not enough to go around. It's too late. The time production ramps up. Now, did you see all the things like China? They're pumping them out, and supposedly the U.S. bought a whole bunch from France. Did you hear about that story? They were supposed to go to France.
Yeah, and the U.S. came on in and just said, we'll give you cash for them.
That must have rolled up a truck full of it, huh?
Yeah.
And then, on John from Tennessee. Yeah, you're wrong, dude. 5G has nothing to do with it. It's a safe technology. I mean, it is radiation per se, but I mean, this whole thing began with the microwave and all this other crap, and 5G has nothing to do with this, because just look at Iran. They don't have 5G, like I said, and they have a lot of cases. So that throws that theory out the window big time, right?
Yes, it really does. All right, well, Dustin, thanks an awful lot.
Yep.
We're going to let you go. The phone lines are loaded up here. Before we take another phone call, though, the mailbox is filling up with all kinds of comments, and I'm going to read one of them to you right now. Joe needs to shut up about the Navy captain. He has no military background, meaning Joe from Tennessee, and knows nothing. Ships need to operate at 100% readiness. Clearly, it was not and cannot be at the moment, and this is from a retired U.S. Navy personnel. So I'm in agreement here. I think the captain did the right thing. May have done it the wrong way, but he did the right thing. And even when they gave the press conference, they said they were sure the captain was operating from the best possible motives. I think a letter of reprimand would have been sufficient for this. Anyway, let's go back to the phones here now, and we're going to go to Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. How you doing? Not that captain. I put that on my Facebook yesterday too. The man is a hero and a patriot. Okay, I don't care about this stupid chain of command, and I'm ex-military myself. Okay, you know I was in like 3 years. Okay, Army. But anyway, people got to understand something. It's about time the military started to disobey some of the stupid orders they've got. I wish the captain of that ship that fired on Syria both 2 years in a row over the false flag chemical attack. I wish the captain of either of them ships would have refused to fire the missiles. That would have been the thing. That would send a message to the scum that run this country right now, the evil government and military-industrial complex, the empire, to say no, enough is enough. Even the military is saying no, and that's what ended the Vietnam War, by the way. Mike, I don't know if you know that a lot of soldiers refusing to go out in the field, bragging of officers and high-ranking enlisted men. Okay, that's finally ended it. Okay, and but of course we had a draftee army at the time, mostly a good portion draftee. But this is what's needed. I liked what happened with that general that wrote that letter to Iraq that we're getting out. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. But I think there is a sign that the military is getting ready to say no, enough is enough. And we better hope they are, because if they try to pull a martial law in this country, all right, police won't be able to do it. The police, like in New York City, half the police force is now calling out sick, all right? But the military is capable of it. But let's hope, let's pray that the rank and file soldiers, right, the lower ranking, the enlisted men and the lower ranking mid-level officers would say, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to fire on American citizens. We're not going to bully American citizens. This is not what we took an oath for. I know I wouldn't have done it when I was Army. No way would I fire an American citizen. Somebody told me to. If I had an officer that told me to fire an American citizen, I probably turned around and shot him with the M16 right in the head. He's giving me an order like that. Okay? No way. About time patriotism takes place over the stupid chain of command. We don't have any enemies, Mike. Any external enemies. We have plenty of internal enemies. We don't have external enemies. China is not our enemy. Neither is Russia. Neither is Iran. Okay? That's made up. Right? There's no reason to put, like you said, that's a ship of war. It's a ship of idiots. That's what it is. They're probably I don't know, where were they? In the South China Sea? Or somewhere in that vicinity?
Yes.
Well, we don't belong. We don't belong in these places. Mike, we need to be dealing with this country, and we got enough problems in this country without having to provoke other places. Okay, I'm getting tired of Alex Jones, too, with the Chicom. The Chicom did this to us. They're the ones behind it. No, I'm tired of that. I really am tired of that. This is not the way Jones started. When you knew Jones, he wasn't like that. He was against all these wars and stuff like that, and all these hostilities. All right? I don't know what's gotten into the guy. I guess he's just such a Trump shill today, he doesn't know any better anymore. I think he's going off the deep end. I heard him earlier. I turned him off finally. I don't know about 5G. I'm not thrilled with it. I don't like any of this really high-tech stuff. I don't trust a lot of it. All right? So that this is causing the virus, I mean, I come on. Like Dustin just said, if that was the case, why wouldn't Iran? Iran doesn't have 5G, right? Yes. I'm not sure if New York City is wired for 5G yet or not, but I mean, come on. Enough is enough with him. And everything, the Chicons.
Well,
Chicons are not our enemy, Alex.
You need to look at the history of the United States.
Huh?
You said you need to look at the history of the United States. Every time it gets the economy into a hopeless mess, they get into a war to distract everybody from it, or at least to have something to blame for it. Crash of 1907, World War I. Crash of 1929, World War II. Crash of 2008, and here we are trying to start a war with everybody on the planet.
You know what, Mike? I don't think the American people are going to go with it. I don't even think our military is going to, especially now what you see with Venezuela. This is ridiculous. Indict the leader of another country saying he's a drug dealer? What about indicting all the people that the drug dealers running this country? What about what the CIA did during the Iran-Contra? That was the tip of the iceberg. What they really were doing is if they started the crack epidemic here in the United States. Gary Webb had it down to science, and of course he mysteriously so-called killed himself with 2 shotgun blasts in the back of his head. Come on. All right? Yes. Nobody believes this government anymore. Nobody believes these warmongering dirtbags. Nobody believes a crazed Zionist cultist, end-time rapture-believing fat pig like Pompeo. Nobody believes you all anymore. Don't these people understand that? And this clown, I shouldn't say clown, this guy before, I think it was Joe or something, talking about the ship of war. I don't care if it's a ship of war or not. That captain is a hero, a patriot. He sent, believe me, he fired, you talk about firing a warning shot, he fired a shot over the bow of the establishment in this country, including Trump. All right? Including Trump. He put his men first. He didn't put the military-industrial complex first. He didn't worry about China or Russia or Iran or any of these other places. That's a hero, Mike. That's a patriot.
I agree. I absolutely agree. He did the right thing.
Don't contradict me? Fine. Go right ahead. Bring it on. That man is a hero, Mike. H-E-R-O. Hero. That's about all I got to say, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Dave in New York. I'm going to try and get these last few phone calls before the Lady Love joins us at the top of the hour. Dave in New York, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, Mike. Well, it seems to me that we are in a rut of lack of good information, and I appreciate the way you can keep your head together on this whole thing. But there's a number of points that we're kind of lacking in. Number one is the testing. Is it specific? And I've been trying to look into this. I haven't really gotten down to it. I am a scientist, okay? But I haven't really gotten that far with it. The information, who's infected, how many deaths are there, how many patients are there, are these hotspots really, what they're putting on TV? And we see some video accounts. There's, the Ashley videos. Okay, well, there's no time date stamp, and there's no GPS stamp given for these. We can't really verify when and where they were taken. And then the other one, there's this guy on there. He's got a couple cuts on there, and he's a dollar vigilante. At the end of his video, it's an advertisement. It's an infomercial. So, I mean, don't ask me about that. Eyewitness accounts. I'm gathering eyewitness accounts that I see, that I talk to, or I know people who talk to them. John Moore is also getting some of these from the morning show that he has, and I think this is some good, real information. How much and how much of the whole story we're getting, I don't know. The 5G rollout. Now, I'd like your opinion on this. I haven't also looked into this, and I'd like to nail this down, whether there's any chance that the 5G could interact here. Now, what it could do, if it did have an effect, it could raise the number of people who with flu-like symptoms, and they could be pooled in with the others. So, but what is your opinion of the 5G? You're saying that it's definitely not having an effect?
I'm saying that I don't think 5G is any better or worse than any other electromagnetic radiation that we're exposed to on a daily basis. But as one of the earlier callers pointed out, at that extremely high frequency, the radio waves don't penetrate much. In fact, I would not be surprised if they don't really penetrate the human body. And that's why they're building so many 5G nodes, if you will, towers, if you will, so close together, because it's lower power and the radio waves just don't travel that far. They can be blocked by leaves on the trees. So, I don't think 5G is really an issue. I think there was a campaign to basically quell public demand for 5G because our existing cell phone companies didn't want to spend the money to upgrade. They're probably still making payments on the 4G.
Yeah, well, that's rather interesting. What I observe is there's numerous frequencies of 5G. The 60 gigahertz, if they use that, there is a strong absorption band for oxygen at 60 gigahertz. Now, what that's going to do, that's what I need to research. And maybe if I find something out, I will give you a call back and let you know.
Okay, well, if oxygen is absorbing the 60G signal, it's got to re-radiate it some other way, as heat or whatever. It's still going to be an oxygen atom, however.
It's oxygen molecule O2 absorbs it. Yeah,
okay.
And so that's what's bonding to hemoglobin. The whole, people. I don't even want to go into it, but it could have an effect. Okay, no sense talking about it if it doesn't have an effect. So. I
seriously doubt the 60 hertz signal is going to get much past your skin.
Okay. Very good. Thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks. We're going to switch to Robert in London. Aloha, Robert. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. Hi, this is Robert. I hope you can hear me clearly.
I can. You're on the air.
Right. Yes. I'd like to talk about Dr. Robert Rowan, MD, and he's got a number of YouTube videos out there. This morning, when I woke up, I went to my computer, and there was a missive from Paul Roberts. Who he talked about Dr. Rowan. He has a solution for the COVID-19. He's into ozone therapy, which is a very old, which has been invented since the 1900s, and he has published an amount of details about it, but it's all ignored because that system is out or is public information. You can't take out a patent out on it because it's old information. So therefore, the pharmaceutical companies aren't interested apparently. But apparently, it's a very simple system to get rid of the COVID-19, and it's to do with you oxygenate the blood. Apparently, in the video, I'm not a doctor in any way, so I can try and what I can gather from the video is that you can two methods. You can either you take a little bit of blood from the patient, you add an amount of oxygen, 100% oxygen, mix it up, and then pump it back into the patient, and or you can even apparently you just fill your syringe with 100% oxygen, I believe. I could be wrong. And you can just intravenously pump it straight into the blood vessel, apparently.
Well, you can kill somebody. You can kill somebody that way.
No, because apparently, no, that he said that, but what it does, it's the nitrogen that kills the body.
No.
It's not air. It's not air.
Robert, I understand it's not air, but oxygen is still a gas. And gas forms bubbles, and in inconvenient places can cause death.
Well, I agree, and he talks about that's the bend, etc. I agree. I mean, you.
All right, Robert, I got to let you go. We've got to take a break.
But anyway, that is a very important information, in my opinion. Yeah.
All right,
you go to the YouTube to have a look.
Thanks a lot. We'll be right back after these few words. And Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go grab these last two phone calls before the top of the hour. Steve in Riverside, what's on your mind today?
Are you there, Mike?
Yes, and you're on the air.
Okay, fine, Mike. Boy, we're going all over the places on subjects right now, but I did want to say about how easy it is to panic the American people. Do you remember when Johnny Carson made a joke about toilet paper?
Yes, I remember when it was almost as effective as Orson Welles' War of the Worlds.
Right. Immediately everybody went down and bought toilet paper, and then they created a huge toilet paper shortage. I know when I went back to Indiana to see my parents, they had a big stockpile of it in their basement. But I'm older than you, and I'm sure I'm older than Dustin, but I've seen so much of this before that panicking is not, it's so easy. I've never seen anything hyped up like this. Have you?
No, I haven't.
Well, I remember. Okay, let's just drop back. There's been a number of these things happening, but the AIDS, HIV panic that hit. They told us it was going to spread to the heterosexual population, and it was going to be another Black Death, and the fear that was ramped up. It brought back the only laughable thing I can remember about it was when they had Okay. Yeah, Mike. I just had somebody say I have to get off. Anyway, the point was they can do whatever they can create such fear in us that they can do what they want. I remember how they supposedly said that the HIV got here. It was out of Africa. Then it got to Haiti. Then it came into the gay scene in San Francisco and New York and all these other things. It never made much sense to me. Then they came up and said there was a gay flight steward that went around. And I'm on the air. Yeah, everybody seems to want to use the phone at this time. Anyway, Mike, yeah, it's just, she's got a school. Okay, so the whole thing never made much sense to me. The one thing that I remember that did make a lot of sense was the British doctor that published a book of Who Murdered Africa, and what he said, it was created in the germ laboratories at Fort Detrick, Maryland, and then put into smallpox vaccinations to Africa, and also in Gamma-Golian shots that were just distributed to the here in the States. But the whole thing then just died away, sort of, didn't it? It never spread to the heterosexual population, and we all moved on. But Magic Johnson and that one kid.
Steve, I got to let you go.
You're going to move on anyway.
Yeah, we got to move on, and you've got to let somebody else use the phone. So we're going to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back with hour two. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number two. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we're going to take one more phone call before we turn the mic over to the lovely Lady Claire. Peter in Los Angeles, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike, and thanks for getting me on here. And hi to you too, Claire, if you're there.
Thank you. I'm right here.
Hi. I'm calling about the captain of the Roosevelt situation.
Yes.
And it's I spent quite a bit of time in the military, and the fact that they relieved him of command for breaking the chain of command, which is a policy rather than a law. His choice, I guess, would have been to either break the chain of command or to disobey what he viewed as an unlawful order and just headed to port, because maybe he could have asked for a court-martial, said that he was basically the commander of a plague ship, that a ship chock full of nuclear weapons, and a ship not at war with a nuclear reactor on board, and that he was in danger maybe of not even being able to stand watch or something, and that order was endangering his command, and it would have been better off. They can relieve him over the policy thing of breaking the chain of command. The Navy takes it very seriously. Obviously, there's nuclear weapons involved. If a nuclear sub captain did that, that's pretty important as well, or a missile silo, a commander or whatever. So Joe is right. This guy broke the chain of command. They can't have that. On the other hand, we're not at war, and I would hope that I would have had the courage to do the same thing, that his crew was endangered, and I just would have done it a little differently. And if they ordered him not to go to stay at sea and have this contagion spreading on his ship, and all his crew, endangering 5,000 crewmen, and all those nuclear weapons and everything else, that he could have done something more serious and disobeyed what he viewed to be an unlawful order, or an order that made necessary take his chances with the court-martial. But,
well,
so
let me just step in here for a second. We don't know what orders he was under, and don't forget the commander of the entire battle group was on that carrier, just a few doors down from the commander, and the commander could have walked down there and said, "I think we have a problem." So I agree with what he did.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I agree that how he did it possibly required a rethink. But again, he's responsible not just for the ship, but for the welfare of the crew. And as that retired U.S. Navy person indicated in the email, if you have a significant portion of the crew is coming down with some kind of an illness, then the ship is not really 100% ready to go to war anyway. So
yeah, it's a plague ship. That's right. It's unable even maybe to stand watch, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I agree with
maybe the task group commander, Mike, and all these are maybes, was saying no. We've got to stand off on our intimidation patrol of China or whatever we were doing in the South China Sea or wherever this is going. But the guy had no choice but to go public. And I would have, under those circumstances, we don't know those are the circumstances. I agree with most of you that was the proper thing to do if he was under orders, and that was the only way to get it to save his command, his crew. I would have hoped I would have had the courage to do the same thing.
Well, again, we don't know who leaked the letter to the media, and again, I think his real crime, if you will, was that it did go public, because we're hearing from all over now that the military is basically clamping down and saying, don't go public with how many of the people in your command are down with this coronavirus, even as they're continuing to move troops around the world. And if you remember the swine flu pandemic of 1918, the reason it spread around the world was U.S. soldiers were being rotated all over the globe, and they carried it with them.
That's right. That's right. And in view also, they're telling ships, other ships, passenger ships, to stand off and not come ashore. And maybe it took something like that for this guy who was concerned with the welfare of his crew in order to get them put ashore. I mean, who knows? But it's a touchy situation when you've got nuclear weapons involved. And I would tell you that admiral, if somebody was giving him orders to stay at sea or to not take drastic action with the sick crew, that admiral probably should be relieved. But we'll never hear about that. But at any rate, that was my 2 cents, Mike.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to go ahead and take one more call before the Lady Claire. Mark in Georgia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I just got word, and turned down the fan. There you go. You can hear me better now, right?
Yes.
One, there is no test that is COVID-19 specific. It will test for the coronavirus, which is out there and all over the place. So what? I mean, so if you had regular coronavirus, well, let's just call it a cold. 20 years ago, you still have the immunity reagents that are going to cause the test to come out positive. So all these people testing positive for some kind of coronavirus is really taking things way out of hand. And what really concerns me is the unfolding economic collapse is going to kill millions, if not tens of millions. That's just Americans. I don't know how many people worldwide are going to die from the result of this unfolding economic collapse. And there are countries where, it's like if you're a bushman out in the way out there where you've never seen a TV in your life, it's probably not going to affect you at all. If you're in a culture that relies on electricity and hot and cold running water and all like that, then you understand where I'm coming from. It's our culture being dependent on all of these luxuries that is a serious cause for concern. So I beg people, grow a victory garden while you may, and be ready to protect it, because there's going to be some really hungry people in the not too distant future. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. We'll probably be talking about that a little bit later in the show. Anyway, thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go. And for those of you watching on YouTube, this gorgeous creature sitting next to me is the lovely Lady Claire, who likes to join us on our final hour every Friday with her unique perspective on the world. So, Lady Claire, what's the first thing you want to talk about?
The first thing I want to talk about is Putin's response to Trump oil gambit. This comes to us from zerohedge.com. If you've never checked out this website, I very strongly suggest. I don't agree with everything they say, but there are moments when they are just bang spot on. Apparently, Putin has said to President Trump, yeah, we'll consider an oil cut in production, but the U.S. needs to join. Now, there was a virtual Monday meeting of the OPEC conference, and a new ask had apparently emerged from within the oil-producing nations. Any production cut would have to include the U.S., which alongside with Russia, Saudi Arabia, and others in the OPEC nations, would to be around 10 million barrels per day. Now, today, Vlad Putin just confirmed this. And he said that he has spoken with President Trump about this, and that President Trump made the observation, we are all worried about the situation, and that he is ready to act with the U.S. oil markets. Now, with the 10 million barrels per day in oil production needed to be cut, he also added that cuts must be taken from the Q1 2020 levels, kind of jabbing at Saudi Arabia sideways, which is hoping to cut by 3 million barrels per day to go back to where it was in February. And when Putin used the word we, he also included the U.S. because he explained that joint actions are required on all the oil markets, including shale. Now, looking at the situation on global energy markets is a little bit difficult, and demand is falling, according to Goldman Sachs, by 26 million barrels per day. But Putin said that he wants long-term stability on the oil market and that he's comfortable with $42 a barrel. And in fact, he has also said that he could live with $30 a barrel Russian oil. He could do that. But he also summarized the reasons why the oil price collapsed, and he was a little generous. He blamed it on the coronavirus, the lack of oil demand, and drumroll, the Saudi withdrawal from the OPEC Plus deal. Now, at this moment, Russia's energy minister Novak spoke and explained what it would take to get such a cut. Speaking to Putin, the Russian energy minister said it was necessary for everyone to cut oil production for this thing to work, and that had to include Saudi Arabia and the U.S., and that the output should be cut for a couple of months and gradually recover thereafter. Now, what Novak also mentioned about the Saudis is that they are still very much negatively influencing the oil market, and that oil storage could be filled for the next 1.5 to 2 months only. After that, there's no place to put the oil, Mike.
We've got some room in the garage.
That is going to take a lot of room. And,
it's a big garage.
Dear, I love you, but no.
Okay.
And apparently there is going to be another meeting about this issue on the 6th of April, which is next Monday. Now, love him or hate him, you have to appreciate how Russia is playing hardball with this. And Russia's not making the move without of the U.S. and Saudi Arabia playing as well. But there's another article also from Zero Hedge that what appears to be a minor fistfight over the price of oil, and it puts it into its real context. And the article is titled Putin and Trump versus the New World Order, the Final Battle. Now, this originally comes to us from Sylvain Laforest via the orientalreview.org. I don't know this guy, but I think I'm going to start to follow him because what he is saying makes absolute horse sense to me, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about the unknown being scary and exciting all at the same time, which we're dealing with. You know, we are all touched, we're all moved by what's going on, particularly those who have family and friends who are dealing with this virus right now. And one of the first things he says, and I'm going to quote directly because I think it's worth listening to what this guy's got to say. All empires eventually die, And we're in the terminal phase of the new world order that will not recover from the Russian roulette game it has been playing, because Vladimir Putin just handed it a loaded gun and it pulled the trigger. So what we've got now is a virus which may or may not be as rough as other pandemics we have seen come and go. But I'd like to go back into the Wayback Machine to discuss this. Now, years ago, Monsanto, the Franken chemical producer, which used to produce Roundup, decided to professionally stomp all over a French scientist who was warning the world. Now, this is 2012, right? This is 8 years ago. Okay, who warned the world after doing his due diligence that the primary ingredient in Roundup Ready GMO food was causing cancer if it was fed to lab animals over the magic 90 days. Now, why did Monsanto use that measure? Because they knew that up to 90 days, the animals would not show any symptoms. This guy's name is Gil-Eric Serrantini, Serrani, Serralini. Please put the last name down. Google him, Bing him if you wish, because I have a feeling that that's a name that's going to get kind of washed away from certain search engines in the not too distant future. I wound up having to find it, by the way, on Bing because I could not find it on Google. He was a professor at the University of Caen in Normandy, and he said that rats that were fed with NK603 corn and Roundup weed killer developed liver and kidney disease and mammary tumors. And now this study went to the end of the life cycle of these rats, which was 2 years. Now, the study was just absolutely flogged. And of course, Monsanto was very much behind the flogging. The scientific journal in which this research was released depublished it. Okay, which is one of the, I mean, it's the KOD to any scientific researcher to have your work pulled by the scientific journal that originally published it.
As I recall, the scientific journal hired a former Monsanto employee as an editor.
Yeah. And the nice thing about what this guy has done, he has placed the raw data in the public domain so that anyone can look at the numbers, figure out he and his team came up with the numbers. And the reason he did this was he made the observation, and I think it's very true, it's also true of certain treatments for this COVID-19. So please remember this. Censorship of research into the risks of a technology so intertwined with global food safety undermines the value and credibility of science, which the team said. And it was published about 8 years ago, and made these discoveries. Now, many other scientists said at the time that study was published that it was flawed, that it was too small a model, and didn't really make any relevance in terms of what the natural diet of these rats would have been, as opposed to what they were being fed in this study. And so what was thought originally was that farmers could spray their fields to kill weeds without harming the crops. Well, guess what? Not only did it harm the crops, but it harmed the people who eat it. And that's why if you know someone at one of your big box stores, one of your managers, or a local grocery store, tap them on the shoulder and say, when are you going to be getting some non-GMO food in? I'd really like that, because you're missing out on my revenue for those products because I can't find them here. You say it with a smile. You be polite, not belligerent. Anyway, let's get back to this. The authors stood by their original research and lashed out at the journal Food and Chemical Toxicity for withdrawing it, which was, horrible. And they went on to state Roundup formulations and Roundup tolerant GMOs should be considered as hormonal disruptors, and their present assessments on health are drastically deficient. And so let's fast forward on this just a little bit to the current situation. Now, people have been treating this COVID-19 successfully with some older chemicals that have been used for other things. Chloroquine has been used by the Chinese medical community with great results. And there was someone who improved it by adding a pneumonic antibacterial called azithromycin, and
Azithromycin.
thank you, azithromycin rendered eyeballs and saved every one of his first 1,000 cases except one. But what President Trump did, and I have to respect him for this, he immediately imposed the same treatment through a fight against his own FDA, bought and paid for by the deep state. And this all forced the medias to talk about Dr. Didier Raoult's miracle elixir, kind of creating a death warrant, let's say kryptonite, on our conference in all Western governments, and especially in their medical agencies. The WHO and medias were trying to destroy this guy while inventing sudden dangerous side effects. And I'm going to get to a story on the other side of the break about that, which in retrospect is painfully funny. This drug has been used for 60 years to treat malaria. And there was now the infamous letter by Michigan's government, which ordered the following interstate on 24 March. We're going to get back to this.
Okay, we got to take a break for commercials.
All right.
We also have a caller waiting on the line we're going to get to as soon as we come back to these quick sponsors. And Aloha America, welcome back to our show. We're going to go ahead and take a couple of phone calls here before Claire finishes her story. Brian in Pennsylvania, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Brian in Pennsylvania, are you there?
Mike, can you hear me?
Yes, you're on the air.
Hi, Mike. I usually don't get a chance to call in. It's been quite a few years since I got a chance. Usually I listen to you from the Ron Gibson when he records it and plays it on YouTube, and I really, really get to see it. But last few days I keep watching. I'm like, I need to call in. Because there's three things that like people tend not to really care about, but they're pretty serious things. And it has to do with the way everybody's kind of panicking over COVID-19 and everything. And there are three things that kill people in large numbers, and we don't burn the economy to the ground for. One of them is HIV, which kills 1 million plus people a year. The second is tuberculosis, which also kills 1 million plus people a year. And diarrhea, which, believe it or not, kills more than 1 million people a year. And we don't burn the economy to the ground or burn the world to the ground for those three things that are far more deadly. And it just like blows my mind how there's things to take seriously, and then there's things that we overreact so vastly on. And it's like, and like HIV in California was lowered from a felony down to a misdemeanor for knowingly giving somebody HIV, which you would think that would be pretty serious because HIV is almost a death sentence.
Well, you know, the other thing that we're ignoring the fact, I mean, medical mistakes are still killing more people than the coronavirus.
Yes, vastly. There's like, I think like tens of millions of people a year die from medical malpractice and just doctors not really caring. My friend almost lost his mom a couple of months ago because she had like a ulcer and they gave her blood thinners and she almost bled to death from it. Yeah, like they started treating her and they gave her, what's it called? Warfarin, I think is the name of it. Yeah. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, they gave her warfarin. Yeah, they gave her warfarin and boom, she like lost like 30% of her blood in like a couple of days. And my friend like nearly punched the doctor out for it.
Yeah, they did that to my father. He suffered a cerebral event and they loaded him up on warfarin, which just made things worse. And ultimately he died.
It's scary that the things that we tend to just turn a blind eye to are almost more things that we should worry about and panic about over this, which yes, it is. I'm not one of those people that say the disease doesn't exist. I think the panic and we just overreacted so severely that we kind of went past where the normal level of like where caution is. We're like we saw caution and we're like, let's leap off the cliff.
It's corona mania is what it is.
Yeah, and it's just like it's mind blowing because like I work at a thrift store and we do pickups and donations and everything like that. So I drive around pretty much to my entire town, and I pretty much don't have a job. And I'm one of those crazy people who are like Like, why can't we be doing it? It's two guys in a truck, and we're driving around, and we're just picking up stuff. We're delivering mattresses to people, and it's like. But I went to Walmart the other day, and there was like the whole parking lot was just packed to the gills. It's like two guys in a truck going and doing deliveries is a bad thing, but Walmart can have mass amounts of people there. It's like, I don't know.
Well, we went to our local Walmart recently, and they had X's on the floor 6 feet apart and said, please stand on the X's when you're waiting for the checkouts. And they had sanitizers so you could wipe the handrails on the shopping carts. And they were starting to really take it seriously. A lot of people working there had the face masks and the gloves on.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the customers had face masks and gloves on.
Yes.
So,
definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's a good thing that you guys are. My town is pretty small, so I'm sure most of the people probably don't really care. The other part is it's like we're in kind of isolated, so they're like, we're fine. Even though I'm sure that things to worry about more would be like any kind of communicable diseases, because we have a pretty large population of druggies in my town, and I'm sure they spread all kind of like HIV and bloodborne illnesses like no problem. Like there's another one. I can't think of it. I can't think of the name of what it is. It's a blood poison. I just can't think of the name of it for some reason. It's like really serious in my town. But anyway, that's all I wanted to say, Mike. Thanks for all you do, and keep up the good work.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot here. We're coming up on another break. We got another caller waiting on the other side here. You need to understand, getting on back to this whole situation with the chloroquine and the hydroxychloroquine, is these are very inexpensive chemicals, and they've been around for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And the pharmaceutical industries aren't interested in any medication that is, first of all, inexpensive mm-hmm. and can't be patented, so they can have market exclusivity. Okay, we're going to take a break here for commercials, and we'll be back. And Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to take one more phone call from Anak in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. My name is Anuj. I'm calling for the first time. I love hearing your show. And I love your documentary that you made, that all wars are bankers' wars. That was an amazing documentary.
Thank you.
One thing actually no problem. One thing I was thinking about, and I'm not a doctor, like it's not my field or anything. I was thinking that like if we want to cure this coronavirus, like we put like this alcohol based, like these disinfectants in our hands, like which has like 60% or more alcohol. We use these chemicals to disinfect our hands. Now the thing is that I was thinking that what if we smell this? Like this is going to, like this virus attacks our lungs. So what if we put this in our hand and smell it? Those particles will go inside our lungs and they might attack this virus. Or what if like we just like we take alcohol, which is like 60% or more.
I need to interrupt. I need to interrupt here, because the alcohol that is being put on your skin is denatured alcohol, and it's called denatured because there are chemicals in it to make it toxic. And this all has to do with, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms wanting to make sure that alcohol you buy at the pharmacy cannot be drunk, without the tax stamp. And so they take ethanol alcohol, which is the drinking alcohol, and they mix it with methanol, which is sometimes called wood alcohol. And if you take it internally, it's going to cause all kinds of problems. It can make you go blind. And so, no, that would not work. That would not be a good idea.
Okay, so we wash our hands with soap. So that soap is like they say, like you wash your hands for 20 seconds with soap water, and that will get the virus out of your hands. Now, what if we put this soap in this water and then we put this in our nose? Now, our lungs are porous in nature. The water that goes inside your lungs, that will actually go away. Like it will just get inside your body. It will go away. But like for example, like when we are swimming, so when we swim, then the things are like water goes in our nose. Now the things are like if we put this water, this soap water, or let's say like a normal alcohol, like that we drink,
Yes.
Can that cure your virus inside your lung?
Well, again, I think it would be very, very painful to put soap up your nose. It would be very, very painful to inhale alcohol, and basically you're drowning yourself.
Yeah.
You know, and it would be very, very painful. You could dry out the little alveoli cells that do the oxygen transfer, and these are not good ideas, and I strongly recommend you not try them.
Oh no, I was not trying that. I was just thinking about it. Like there's so much of coronavirus going on, so I was just thinking about it, but no, I'm not going to try it. Yeah, but thank you for whatever you are doing, and I love your show, and I will keep on listening. But thank you for taking my call.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to get back to Claire, and we were talking about the governor of Michigan, and take it away, Claire.
Okay. I think this is going to ultimately fall into her one of the things I maybe wish I hadn't done department. This was very, very close in time. This was 24 March, a couple of weeks back. And Michigan's Governor Gretchen Whitmer's Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, get this, threatened all doctors and pharmacists in the state who prescribe or dispense
hydroxychloroquine
to treat COVID-19. And the agency's letter, which was done and distributed on 24 March, warns physicians and pharmacists of professional consequences of prescribing this drug. Yes, and beyond the rational recommendation against hoarding, as the production of this medication needs to be ramped up, the letter deviates into open threats of administrative action against the licenses of doctors that prescribe this medication.
Now, I wonder what large pharmaceutical industry is located inside Michigan.
Yeah.
And mind you, this is the one person Biden has said he's considering as his vice presidential running mate.
Oh, Lord help us, Lord help us. Someone please document every aspect of this. And whoever her challenger is for her next election cycle, make sure you've got all the facts now. Okay?
Right.
I'm just saying, get all the facts now before they disappear from certain search engines, which don't want our fevered little brains to be worried about something this stupid on the part of a state governor, And again, getting back to this article, the coming into the New World Order, and he describes this as an amazing victory for Trump and the general population on social media, who exposed together the pathological lies of the official communications channel of every New World Order country. And de facto, the credibility of these puppet governments has just sort of evaporated. And in Italy, which has been the eye of the storm in Europe for COVID-19, you have to wonder how soon they're going to do Italexit from the EU. I guess that's what you would call it.
Yes.
And it's going to trigger a domino effect, which is going to run through every EU and NATO member.
Well, the coronavirus is already shattering the European Union because each one of the member nations is adopting their own rules regarding lockdowns and border.
Yeah.
And they're refusing to go along with Brussels' attempt to have a unified policy applied across the EU. So we're already starting to see the fractures happen.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I'd like to go back to Vlad, the non-impaler Putin. When he originally was put in charge of Russia, there was not a whole lot of signs that he would be a lot better than the guy he replaced. An ex-KGB officer, seemed like a choice more driven by nostalgia than ideology. But Putin had a lot more going for him as an individual than most people saw or would give him credit for. Very much a patriot, very cunning ruse, and he had an economist friend named Sergei Glazyev, who despised the New World Order, but re-embodied kind of a reincarnation of the long-lost Russian ideology of total political and economic independence. Does anyone see what's going on in Russia right now? Relatively low debt load. GMO foods have been banned in Russia.
Yes.
They're about to become the breadbasket for Europe. And what apparently Putin did the first couple of years in office was he drained the Russian swamp from the oligarchs and mafiosis that his stumbling predecessor had left in his trail of empty bottles. You think the guy drank a little?
Just a little.
Just a little. Now, again, love him or hate the guy, but he is someone who understands the lessons of history. And because his opponents had been kind of looting the planet for 250 years through colonization ensured by a military dominance, Vlad knew that he had to start building up his military machine. And he has come up with all kinds of weapons, knickknacks, stuff I can't even pronounce, with technology that is just amazing. The best defensive systems on the planet, the best electronic jamming systems, and the best planes. And to make sure that a World War III scenario would be absolutely useless, he came up with, as this author states, stuff that nightmares are made of: the Sarmat, the Poseidon, Avangard, and all unstoppable and capable of destroying any other country in a matter of a couple of hours. So what he could do with this was to defeat any NATO force or any of its proxies, which he started doing in 2015 in Syria. And he proved to every country that independence from the New World Order banking system was a matter of choice. Now, the article has said that Putin essentially won the Syrian war. I think that there are going to be a lot more twists and turns before that is really acknowledged to have happened. But all of a sudden, you've got countries that didn't think that they had a choice now realize they do, because Russia's become pretty invincible in its own. And on a diplomatic level, it got China to its side and then managed to protect independent oil producers like Venezuela and Iran, while leaders like Erdogan and Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia decided maybe to side with Russia, at least just a little bit. And it's not that he's holding the best poker hand, but he's holding the entire deck of cards. Now, right at the moment, Putin is in control of the oil market. And it's something we don't like to talk to. It's dirty, it's ugly, but it's what lubricates economies and armies. And while the bankster and NATO members can only watch, they don't really have a means to get it back right now. Now, with the results Putin's been getting in the last 5 years, the New World Order suddenly looks like a house of cards that's about to crumble. And he called a meeting with OPEP, which we've just talked about earlier in the show, and killed the price of oil by refusing to lower Russia's production, taking the barrel to under $30 a barrel. And he killed the costly Western oil production. So all of the money that had fallen out of that market had to be reinjected by the Fed and other central banks to avoid a downslide and the final disaster. Unfortunately for them, our bankers are now out of solutions.
You can't go on printing up that money without making it worthless.
Yeah.
In fact, at the rate they're going, the dollar will be worth less than a sheet of toilet paper.
Yes, or a Zimbabwe dollar after hyperinflation.
Yes.
Remember that huge Zimbabwe note that you had?
Yes.
We're getting there. And in the meantime, Trump also poked at the tie-wearing gangsters. And while the media avoided the corona-killing chloroquine subject, an old pill designed to cure malaria, Trump imposed to the FDA the use of this life-saving drug on U.S. infected patients. Now, when the president talks about it, people are going to talk about it. And this ignited a chain reaction. CEOs of pharmacy companies that had just lost vaccine contracts, these people are out of a job. And countries like Canada were looking like genocidal fools for not using the cheap and inoffensive medication, while a most outrageous criminal act by a government was exposed in full light. And this goes back to France. Apparently, the Macron government proclaimed in January 2020 that chloroquine was harmful and had restrained its use just a couple of weeks before the burst of this pandemic. Apparently, Russian roulette is a popular game in Western governments these days around. Now, on this last Saturday, Russia Corona killing brew based on the work of Dr. Raoult, and this time in a real punch to the jugular. Now, most Western companies have to implement the doctor's treatment or face a slap of the Russian pill coming to save its citizens. Apparently, Putin's in the life-saving business these days. The last week of March, he sent 15 military planes filled up with doctors and supplies directly to North Italy after the aid plane from China was blocked by the Czech Republic. I mean, that is a palm-to-face moment. What were they thinking? Now, here's a punchline. I'm going to sort of wind this up with this. And he said that every day is bringing amazing news, which is both terrifying and maybe a little bit good all at the same time. Well, on Sunday, March 29th, the most stunning of them all fell like a ton of bricks on social medias. And apparently the people who have been self-isolating learned that Trump had taken control over the Federal Reserve, and it's now handled by two representatives of the Treasury of the state. Now, of all the craziness, this apparently is one of the best and most shocking. And after 3 years in power, Trump has finally fulfilled his electoral promise of taking private banks out of U.S. public affairs, ending a century of exploitation of American citizens. And who he's got to manage it? BlackRock Investment Group, to start buying important corporations for the federal government. Now, Mike, what this means is that he is nationalizing hunks of the economy while avoiding the crash of market by implicating important private investors in the deal. Mike, your thoughts on this?
Well, it sounds, yes, like indeed he's nationalizing the Federal Reserve, and it should have been done a long time ago.
Yeah.
Because the Federal Reserve has gotten this country into a real mess. And it's interesting to note that after the end of World War II, when the Bank of England lost its status as the global reserve currency, the pound sterling, and the dollar took over, the British government was eventually forced to nationalize the Bank of England. Just to keep them from going under. And I think the same thing is happening here. But we know that the Federal Reserve has been looting and plundering the American people in this nation for over 100 years now. And it is long past due for it to stop. And of course, this makes Trump a target. Because everybody who takes on the Federal Reserve, they get shot at, like John F. Kennedy.
Yes, and killed.
And killed. And Andrew Jackson, who was shot at but survived. And Abraham Lincoln.
Yes.
In fact, that forms a core of that all wars are bankers' wars. Those bankers, they're tough. They will shoot at you.
And yes, and with extreme prejudice, as that phrase goes. Yeah. And I love the ending, which I'm going to quote, because this guy, whoever he is, and I want to follow him, and I'm probably going to share some more of his articles with our readers and listeners. The last thing he says in this article is, Easter resurrection is coming. This might get biblical.
It certainly feels like it. I mean, with all that's going on, the comet, the asteroid, the tornadoes, the floods.
It's a lot going on, but what I am concerned about is what our alleged news media, which is simply a cover-up for what the government wants you to hear and what they don't. I've been noticing that with Fox News, it's been all COVID-19 all the time, all day long. Yeah, and yes, it's important. It's important we take this seriously, as with every other pandemic this country has faced.
Okay, we got to take a break for commercials. Back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And Aloha America, welcome back to our show here. Last segment of our program on this Aloha Friday. And we're going to go back to the phones for another phone call. Lenny in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
What's on my mind, Mr. Rivera and Mrs. Rivera, is the comment you made about the banks liking to shoot at people who don't go along with them. Well, I have a remedy for that. Shoot back.
All right. When they start, they just shoot their asses back. Okay. So, but I didn't get a chance to call in yesterday, but I was listening to your show, and Steve earlier in the show called about QAnon and stuff, and you and him got into a little discussion, and it is my observance that QAnon is just the latest opiate for the masses.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It is no different than the people who've been promised that that the sky is going to open up, and and their hero is going to come riding in. Now, I do believe there's a higher power, but I believe that higher power put it within us to do for ourselves. Okay, and so that's the thing I want to say about that. As far as Justin's comment today about the first your comment about Miss Claire about the Russians and the oil thing. I like what Russia told. I like what Putin told Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You want to pull this move? Go ahead. Call us in 6 to 10 years. We can wait that long.
Yeah.
That's how prepared they are. Unlike everybody else. That's how prepared they are. But going to what Dustin said about the U.S., just right out hawking. Now, they paid for it, but they hawked the masks that were going to France from China. But that's nothing. 2 weeks ago, they actually stole 500,000 masks from Italy and flew them to Tennessee.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, man.
Look it up. Stole it from defense1.com. Looked at the letter 1.com. Look it up. And they stole, I think, 500 million masks and flew them to Tennessee. Just stole them.
Ouch.
Now, here's the interesting thing. You got countries like Cuba, Russia, China, even Venezuela, flying to places like Italy, Serbia, trying to help while the EU has turned this back because Serbia and Italy don't want to play the New World Order game. They just want to be human to their human kind, okay? And they hate them for it. So, but what you see is humanity versus inhumanity rising up, and all of us are going to find ourselves in that place of choice before it is over with. That's all I want to say, and thank you so much. Have a nice weekend.
All right. Well, thanks. Same to you here. And we're coming up here toward the end of the show. Any last words for our listeners?
Yeah. I think I've mentioned on the show that I am a person of faith. I'm a Christian. But let me tell you what I'm praying for right now. I'm praying that the hard science gets to the people all over the world who need remedies that are going to help them now. That's what I'm praying for.
I think that's very good. All right. Here's the music. It's time for us to put this show away and get something done with the rest of the day here. Please stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of RBN. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. It is serious. It is that serious. We'll be back on Monday. Aloha, America.